Hey, welcome back to the channel. In this week's video, we're going to talk about a couple of specific types of moves that are happening in the market right now, upsizing, downsizing, and we're also going to talk a little bit about how to strategically price your property if you are a home seller. Real quick before we get started though, if this is your first time to the channel, my name is Hassan. I'm a real estate agent in the Vancouver area, and I make educational real estate content to help you on your real estate journey. When I'm not making videos like this, I'm helping people just like you buy and sell real estate across the Lower Mainland. So if that sounds interesting to you and you want to chat with me one-on-one, you can book me for a free call in the Calendly link below or on screen, and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss a future video. All right, so we're gonna hop right into it. I want to talk about upsizing, I want to talk about downsizing, but specifically from a strategic standpoint, how to actually navigate this based on the market we're in today. The thing about when you're making a shift in the market, when you're moving up or you're moving down, how you should actually strategically plan for that is very dependent on the type of market you're in, whether that is, more leaning towards a seller's market, whether that is more leaning towards a buyer's market. This is really going to determine how to actually successfully make that move and ensure that, A, you're able to sell your property and A, actually make that move, but also B, you're able to find the right type of property for you. So it makes sense to do these types of moves. The reason I wanted to talk about it in this week's video is, for the first portion of this year, I think a large segment of the people that are actually making moves out there are people that are already in the market, and they're either in a home that is too big for them, like a detached home, for instance, and now they want to get into smaller, maybe like a larger size condo in that sense, or you have young couples, young families that right now are living in condos, and they're thinking it's a good time to get into a detached home. So let's talk about upsizing specifically, because this is where I see a pretty strong opportunity for people that are in a condo or a townhome and they want to get into a detached home. And this is all based on, where the market is at and the sales numbers behind it. When I go through the detailed stats of, the different cities around the Lower Mainland, we have a lot of areas where condos and townhomes have picked up into we'll say a higher end of a balanced market, or actually into a seller's market, meaning that the market is favoring you if you are going to sell your condo or your townhome right now. While at the same time, we've seen a lot of properties on the detached side fall more heavily into a buyer's market. So if you are someone who is going to, again, sell a condo or a townhome, you're in a market that's more optimal to sell that unit. And if you're buying into a detached home, what you're finding is sales activity is so low, and there's a good amount of selection there that it's much easier for you to find a property that's going to work for you. The biggest question when it comes to making an upsize move or making a downside move, it's the first question that everyone asks. Should I sell first and then buy the property? Should I buy the property first? Should I sell afterwards? And I think we're in one of those unique scenarios where you can really minimize risk right now by listing your property, listing your condo or townhome first, selling it, and then knowing that you have not only inventory to choose from, but you have less competition when you're moving into a detached home. Now, typically what happens in the spring market is all price bands and all product types are equally busy. So detached home, seller's market. Townhome, seller's market, condo, seller's market. So in those types of markets, it can be risky to sell first, because there's always the possibility that if you were to sell first and now you're trying to get into a detached home and you're competing with many other buyers on properties, it's not uncommon to actually be writing offers and losing out on 3, 4, 5, and sometimes 6 properties before you find the property that you like. I can think of specifically an instance where this was the hot market, probably 2021-ish, I want to say, where I had clients that, sold a condo unit and they were trying to move into a detached home, but ultimately what happened is we were missing out on offers because it was so hot and heavy that we had to look at other types of property. We had to look at strata detached properties. We had to look at townhomes because as you miss out on those properties, the pricing escalates away from you. Now we're in a unique scenario now where even though the market is a little bit softer on the detached home side, and it's softer overall, like activity wise, prices are kind of hovering around the same spot. They're not really flexing upwards. They're not really flexing downwards so much. And so if you're going to do an upsize, you can put your condo, your townhome on the market, and if you price it right, it's going to sell. You can have a bit longer of a completion. So one of the things that you can typically control is how long you're going to have that completion date. And that allows you the time to get into a detached home, again, without competing and getting in at a fair value that's not running away from us. Now, you get to avoid the risk that happens with, again, selling first, buying into a hot market. That doesn't exist right now. So I think if you're considering, maybe you're a young family, you're thinking of upsizing, generally speaking, it makes sense to sell that property first, move into the next one. Now, sometimes clients will come to me and they'll have spotted a property and they'll basically say, look, I want to make a move, whether that's a downsize, and very often it is. They'll say, look, I want to make this downsize, but I only want to make it for this specific property that I viewed. And this just happened to me about a month and a half ago. Client went to an open house, fell in love with a property. And so now, she's like, I want to move, I want to downsize, but if it's not that property, I don't want to do it. And so you can see that put us in a very unique situation where if we were to list her property, get it ready for the market, do the marketing, do the open houses, it was very likely that the property that she saw was going to be off the market. There was going to be more buyers because it's like what I mentioned off the top. This was a condo, and condos are still, an active market depending on where you're looking. So in this instance, we have to make a gut choice, and we have to say, okay, if we're going to buy first and sell afterwards, in this case, we're selling a detached home, which again, detached homes in some areas is a slower market. You can see how that can be risky. You've purchased the next one. What if you have some hangups, selling the property? You could be stuck with 2 mortgages. So in this instance, and anytime someone tells me, look, I want to buy this property, I want to sell afterwards, my first question to them is, obviously, what's the address of your existing place? And when they give it to me, I'm not looking for, all of the great things about this home that's going to ensure that it sells. I'm looking for all of the deal breakers and the roadblocks and the red flags and every reason why this home won't sell. I'm looking for every wart. I'm looking to see if, for example, if it's a strata property, is there anything wrong with the building that is going to cause a delay in a sale or make it unsaleable? Generally, there's a price for, I'll say, most properties out there, 95% of properties, but not all. So what I need to do, or what a real estate agent needs to do, is they need to vet your existing property and find out all the reasons it won't sell. We have to make sure it's sellable. Number 2, we need to also determine with you how much value, dollar amount, do you need from the sale of your property to complete on the next one. Because if you're writing an offer first and you're getting it accepted and you're moving forward on what you're going to buy, and you're relying on a premium for selling your property, that's a risk that I advise against all the time. I'll tell clients, look, you need to have some buffer. You need to be prepared that you may not get maximum value for this, right? Because markets shift on a day-to-day basis, on a week-by-week basis. We'll try to get that price, but a couple of things. Oftentimes when you're purchasing that next one, you're on a time crunch now to sell your property, and time can work against you when you're trying to maximize that value. And again, number 2, contingencies. If you don't get an extremely high price for that home, are you going to be able to complete on the next one? So generally, it's advisable to always sell first and then buy later. Again, in hot markets, that's very risky. In today's market, it actually makes a lot of sense, and you actually can get good value on a purchase, a pretty stress-free move, especially if you're upsizing into a detached home. Now, I mentioned off the top, I would talk a little bit about pricing strategy in this market, and it ties into what I was just talking about, how in some areas, especially detached homes, I find it's the activity can be so low that when you are a seller or you're a listing agent, it can be very tricky to price a property for the market. Now, as real estate agents, what we do when we're pricing properties is we want to look at comparable type properties, so homes that are the same as yours, similar, and what they sold for within a short window of time. And that's very important. So we can't go back 6 months or 7 months and say, okay, this home on the block similar to yours sold for this price, so that means today you're going to sell for this amount. It doesn't work that way, and especially in an economy that we're in today, the world we're in today, where things are changing rapidly. Like I mentioned, market is changing rapidly. We really want to look at comparable sales within a 30-day window is what I'm shooting for. Sometimes 60 days, I'll look at that. But again, there's been a lot of changes. And so sometimes sellers will come to me and I'll take a look, and we just do not have enough comparable sales data. Perhaps in their area in the last 60 days, there's been 10 detached home sales. But when you look at it, 3 of those are new construction homes. So those are not comparable. 3 of those are tear down properties, land value only. So those are not comparable. 2 of those have significant renovations, renovated from the studs, right? So you can see how the small sample size really affects the ability to figure out what your home is going to sell for. So as real estate agents, as sellers, you have a couple options. You might actually look at your BC assessed value and then look at how the market has moved since July of last year. Now, BC assessed value is not indicative of market value. Very important for me to mention that. But if you take that number for certain types of properties and you basically look at how that market has moved since July of last year, are we up, are we down? You could factor that in and you could use that as an arbitrary number to list at. That's one option. Number 2, and we're seeing this happen more and more in this market, is you can price your home very low and set an offer date and go for multiple offers. And this strategy is actually working. I just did it last week because sometimes you have to allow the market to determine what the market value of your property is. I had an agent actually try and give me crap. They said, in a slow market, how can you do something like this? You're running a lot of risk. But the reality is you're equally as risky to try an arbitrary number, hover on the market, and then invite lowballs. A lot of times it makes sense to price yourself below where you believe market value is and allow the market to take you. Now, generally, when we are in a more active market, it's very easy to determine what your home's value is within a range, within say a percentage point. Say if it's a condo, you can know within 20, 30 grand. Oftentimes you can know with condos even before stepping inside of them, because the reality is they are somewhat commodity driven. But slower markets, as a seller, you really, really want to make sure you price sharp. You want to look at as much data as you possibly can to be able to price it. But don't be scared of this, multiple offer type strategy. And this is probably why, headlines, they're saying that the market is so slow right now. But then you hear agents saying, I was in multiple offers, this property got 15 offers. It's all true. But in order to get those multiple offers in this type of market, listing agents and sellers are pricing much, much lower than they typically would have to in order to get that result. So there you have it, guys. I hope you learned something in this video about upsizing, downsizing, and pricing your home for the market. If you did, hit the like button, because what that does is it takes the video and it sends it out to more people so they can also learn from it. And if you enjoy weekly real estate content, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss a future video. And lastly, again, if you're in the Vancouver area or the Fraser Valley, you want to chat with me one-on-one about your real estate situation, you can book me for a free call or just give me a call. Send me a text, shoot me an email, whatever's easiest for you. But I want to thank you for watching this week's video, and I look forward to seeing you next week.